And you better start swimming or you sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing. From writers and critics who prophesized your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser, now will be later to win. For the times they are a-changing. Come, senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stole. The battle outside raging will soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. Come, mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can. Lend your hand, for the times they are a-changing. The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast, and the slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will be later be last, for the times they are a-changing.
All right, what a rousing start to our service. Thank you, Stephen. That was great. Good morning and welcome to this Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork. I hope you are all loving spring as much as I am. It's great to see the azaleas and other blossoms bloom. And the mugwort are blooming too, but not in our garden, thanks to Ingrid. So no mugwort. But it's such a great time of year, and hope we can all get out and enjoy it, especially after the rain. So, as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every being. We honor our interdependence with all life on this planet and the earth itself. We honor each person's search for truth and meaning. We encourage peace, compassion, equity, and justice for all. We remember the Native Americans pushed off this land by European farmers. And we remember the people captured in Africa, brought in chains to work this land, and then released to freedom, haunted with terror and injustice. We are committed to healing the pain of our past and our present. In our actions outside of these walls, we help those in need of the homeless, the hungry, the marginalized, recognizing that the whole world is our neighbor who we are called to love. Here in our worship together, the rituals we practice and the songs we sing elevate these commitments and bind us emotionally as a community. whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome to bring your full self here. So my name is Kent Martin, and I'm a member of this congregation and part of our lay worship team called the Worship Associates. We are delighted to have Joe Shaw as our guest speaker this morning. Joe just marked his 25th year with the Press Express Group, Express News Group, which publishes the Southampton Press, the East Hampton Press, the Sag Harbor Express, the website 27east.com, and the Express Magazine. He is also co-host of Behind the Headlines on WLIW-FM, a weekly conversation with the region's award-winning local journalists, and the podcast of that show too. If you guys haven't caught it, it's really amazing. It's one of my favorite radio shows of the week. He is executive editor of the Express News Group, and Joe is a native of Pittsburgh, a graduate of Point Park College, and he's married to his wife Dana for 31 years. They have 2 cats, and I think you live in Hampton Bays, is that right? Yeah. So fellow Hampton Baysite, we've got a few of us here. And we look forward to his sermon shortly entitled, Not Since Gutenberg, How Community Journalism Has Changed in 25 Years. Our pastor, the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, is in our pulpit about 2/3 of Sundays. I was nervous to hear she was speaking in Portland, Oregon last weekend. Every time that other congregations see how amazing she is, I just worry that she's going to get romanced away, so that can't happen. Thank you to Carl Wittenberg and Mark Potter and Monica Sasada for their tech assistance today. And a very warm good morning to all of our friends on Zoom. We're so glad you can join us as well. And we're always thrilled to have our music director, Stephen Skoldberg, in the meeting house. By the way, Stephen and his band, Just Add Water, that's the name of his band, one of his many bands, I might add, Just Add Water, recently released a half-hour video on YouTube that features all original music, and it's quite amazing. I'd encourage you to search it out on YouTube by looking for East End Underground, Just Add Water. That was the name of the show on LTV, along with the name of their band. And ask Stephen to put you on his email blast. He has a list that tells you where he's playing around the area, in what band and so forth. He's a busy guy, and we are so fortunate to have a small piece of his energy and time here on Sunday mornings. So, and he just returned from a trip to Spain and Italy with his wife, where they visited family and played tourist. How fun that you have relatives in those 2 places. We extend a special welcome to those of you who may be new to our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, although I think we're all regulars this morning, so no need to invite somebody to introduce themselves. As far as an announcement, we have our annual garden cleanup after service. I know it's been raining and it's a little soggy, but thank you to Pam for organizing it, and our garden stalwarts, and Mark and Ken and the whole crew. So thank you guys for all the energy that you put in fighting mugwort in our garden. And I hear pizza will be served if you stick around, so there is that payoff. I know Ken had a presentation at Sag Harbor where's Ken? There's Ken. Bay Street Theater. At Bay Street Theater on Thursday, was it? And there's another one coming up this coming Thursday. I wasn't able to make it. I hope you had a good turnout, but excellent. Yeah, so what a treasure we have in Ken Dorff and his perspectives on the Middle East. So please go if you can. Yeah, any other announcements? Okay, and you can always find more information about how to connect to events this week in your e-bulletin and on our site. And it's best if you can get announcements for the pulpit to our administrator by Tuesday of the week that you want them announced in. But we're always happy to get last-minute messages too. So you can find a link for today's order of service in the chat online that Mark can put in there. We're reintroducing Passing the Peace. So please take a moment to say hi to your neighbors and check in. Of course, we have lots more time to do that during coffee. So nice of Zanya and Anjali to say hi. So we have a great team this morning to do our chalice reading and chalice lighting. I'd like to invite Zianya and Anjali to come to the front to do that. Our chalice lighting is the words of Eric A. Heller Wagner, and Zianya's going to read it. Okay, so it's this paragraph right here.
This one, okay. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life.
Thank you, guys. For our first hymn, please rise as you are willing or able to sing number 318 in the gray hymnal, We Would Be One.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for the meaning which finds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
I've invited Rachel to come to the lectern here and lead an antiphonal reading, which is number 565 in the gray hymnal. So please find that in the back of your hymnal, number 565. Rachel will lead the regular type, and you all will read the italics type. Gotta get right on the mic.
Always it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision.
It is easier blindly to venerate the saints than to learn the human quality of their sainthood.
It is easier to glorify the heroes of the race than
To give weight to their examples.
to worship the wise is much easier than to profit by their wisdom.
Great leaders are honored not by adulation, but by sharing their insights and values.
Grandchildren of those who stone the prophet sometimes gather up the stones to build the prophet's monument.
Always it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision. For our first message, I'll be sharing some thoughts that I hope will provide a preface to Joe's remarks. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw inspiration from many sources, especially our Judeo-Christian heritage. As our antiphonal reading early noted, we humans like to sanitize prophets from the past and set them on the shelf rather than ask how they would call us to address issues in current society. The prophet Elijah created conflict when he spoke truth to power about worshiping false gods. What are the false gods we worship today? A more contemporary prophet, Martin Luther King Jr., threatened the white power structure in his quest for justice and equality and paid for it with his life. We know that struggle continues in today's war on woke and the senseless murders of black men and high rates of incarceration. As UUs, we are committed to working for justice and equity through the democratic electoral process and in other ways. But we may forget how healthy, fact-based, robust journalism is absolutely essential to this process. You may recall the name of this talk in the order of service, like white on rice, journalism, democracy. Civil society and a healthy democracy are absolutely dependent on fact-based journalism. Good journalism acts like a contemporary prophet by shining a light on issues in our society, enabling the rest of us to work to correct them. We may think that in the US, we don't have to fear the fate of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was brutally murdered by elements within the Saudi Arabian government. But right here in the US, an investigative reporter in Nevada, Jeff German, was murdered in 2022 to stop him from uncovering a Ponzi scheme that defrauded many local investors. A local elected official was charged with the murder. Globally, 67 journalists and media workers were killed in 2022, a nearly 50% increase over 2021. At least 41 of those were killed in retaliation for their work. The recent Dominion Voting Systems versus Fox News case laid bare the brazen lies and disinformation being pushed out to the public by our biggest TV news network. Social media is full of conspiracy theories and misinformation, and followed by millions of Americans, unfortunately. Fact-based journalism is under attack, and therefore democracy is under attack, and we need to protect both. We need to subscribe to our local, regional, and national newspapers and public radio and TV stations. And we need to let their advertisers know we see those ads and we appreciate their support. It's crazy to me that something as vital as good journalism is dependent on something as frivolous as advertising. But in the United States, that's the way it is. So when you're in Citarella, be sure and say, hey, I saw your ad in the newspaper. And certainly if you're shopping with IBM, say, I heard your ad on NPR. I know, as through my work in NPR sponsorship, that there is a direct line between corporate sponsorship, which is our version of advertising, and the number of journalists NPR can hire. NPR had to lay off 100 people recently, in part because my personal billing was down. I'm just part of that, but it was sobering. We are so fortunate to have a robust local press with the different newspapers that Joe oversees. In small markets and rural areas across the US, local newspapers have died or had to shrink down to a husk of their former selves. Social media and Christian talk radio has filled that void, and as a result, we have a news desert in many places around the country. Even in a large city in my home state of Colorado, some years ago, the Denver Post was bought by a hedge fund, and as is typical, they fired a lot of the journalists and laid off a lot of staff to generate more profit. Fortunately there, many of those journalists that were laid off banded together to create a nonprofit online newspaper, the Colorado Sun, that is now thriving. This collective of journalists has built a strong subscriber base and advertising and is now supporting smaller local papers to provide quality content and local reporting for them. We all need to do what we can to see that reporters are paid to go to the source of the news and gather it, and then to pay for fact checkers. It's a lot cheaper to sit around and make opinions about things without going out to do research. Quality journalism is labor intensive and not cheap, so we have to commit ourselves to pay for it. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to affirm and promote the use of the democratic process. Many of us phone bank to encourage fellow citizens to get out to vote. We attend public meetings to raise our voice for good government, but we also must protect and uphold fact-based journalism that provides a sound foundation for the democratic process. May your roots grow deep, may your branches spread far, may you find the world to be a wonderful place and leave it better for those who follow. For our offering this morning, we support the work of this congregation through the gift of our time, our talents, and our treasure. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work of this congregation, including worship, religious exploration, and community care and connection, and your generosity is reflected in the ways that we are able to show up in our community for justice and service. Our Helping Hands Fund provides support to local organizations, and our Ministers' Discretionary Fund provides support to individuals in immediate need. To contribute, you can use the baskets that are going around, or you can use the link in your chat online, or scan the QR code in your order of service. So Stephen will provide some offertory music.
Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? While you see it your way, run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. We can work it out. We can work it out. Think of what you're saying. You can get it wrong and still you think that it's all right. Think of what I'm saying. We can work it out and get it straight or say goodnight. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is always short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is always short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right, if I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out.
So let's sing our kiddos off to childcare with Kim. And does Kim have a helper today? Do we have somebody set up or any volunteers? Oh, thank you, Amy. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit Love surrounds you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. So as Mark pauses recording of this service, we move into our joys and concerns portion. As we enter into this prayerful moment, we set aside the mundane around the world, and our hearts go out there as well. For our meditation, we'll be singing a cappella the meditation on breathing, which is in your teal hymnal. It's number 1006. Oh, thank you, 1009. And you're familiar with it. We sing it here fairly often. And Pam is going to help. We're going to have the three different parts singing up here. Stephen will start out with the lower voice, and Pam will come in with the middle section, and I'll come in with the final phrase. And feel free to jump in wherever you feel inspired.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Thank you. Please hold a moment of silence with me, and then Stephen will bring us back in with an instrumental reprise of that melody. So you may want to get comfortable, put both feet on the floor, whatever works for you, and we'll hold the silence for about 1 minute, and then Stephen will come in, after which we'll look forward to the second message to our sermon from Joe.
Good morning, everybody. Well, first I have to say I'm really happy and honored to be invited to speak, so thank you to Kent and thank you to all of you. It's a real honor to be here. I won't pretend to have an in-depth knowledge of the Unitarian Universalist Church, but I can tell you that I've always loved the fact that the church's focus is not on dogma, but on a search for truth and meaning, and doing that by having conversations and including about current issues. And I think that's really what it's about. I feel like the search for meaning and truth is at the heart of spirituality. And I've always been taken with, I've read a lot of Elaine Pagel's books about Gnosticism and how the early church was about a search for knowledge and a search for truth. And you know, it's really fascinating for me to be here today for that reason. I have a lot of respect for your organization, your congregation. Which brings me to journalism, which is also about a search for truth and meaning, and I think in a slightly different way, but in a way that's just as sacred in a sense. I really do feel like the search for truth is at the heart of our profession, and despite the fact that it's had some challenges, especially recently, I think it really stays at the heart of what we do for a living as journalists. I just recently marked my 25th year with the Express News Group. I was already a newspaper, I actually was a newspaper editor back in my home area of Western Pennsylvania for about 8 years. My dream job was to be a community journalism, to be the editor of a community newspaper, and I got that job at 22. So it was shocking to me that I was able to get there, but I loved what I did, and when the opportunity came up here, my wife and I moved out here, and I promised that I would stay 3 to 5 years. I thought it would be 3, because I thought that was enough, and here I am 25 years later, and I'm still here. There's a reason for that. The job has never been the same from one day to the next, and in the last 10 years especially, the job has evolved into something completely different, and in a way that's kept it very vibrant and kept me engaged. I never, you know, people don't stay at jobs for 25 years anymore. It just doesn't happen. People want new challenges all the time. I've had those new challenges constantly in this position, and that's a good thing. It's why I'm still here. I've always said I'm something of a community journalism evangelist. This is not just my job, this is my passion. I really do believe that community journalism, the journalism we do at papers like the Southampton Press, the East Hampton Star, the papers in Riverhead and on the North Fork, this is the important journalism that's being done today. People care a lot more about what happens in their backyard. And so it's important for us to raise our game and to do a better job of telling those stories and searching for truth in a way that larger newspapers always have. And I don't think because we're smaller that mission changes at all. Our mission is about finding truth. And, you know, when Kent asked me for a title for this, the title I gave is Not Since Gutenberg. This is something that I tell people all the time, that my 33 roughly years as a newspaper editor just happened to come at a time when we were on the cusp of history, and not since Gutenberg's invention of the printing press in around 1436 has there been a change like we saw with the internet. And the internet arrived right around 8 years into right around the time I made the move from Pennsylvania to here is when the internet began to have a really big impact on what we do for a living. And it can't be overstated. The internet and social media has done some really amazing things. You're having a service that's a hybrid service now. that brings in people from all over the country that are part of your community, and they're able to stay connected. That's an amazing thing. The internet democratized information in a way that the printing press did. You know, the printing press essentially created an infrastructure that allowed information to be spread to a much wider community than existed before that. Gutenberg actually didn't live to see the greatest accomplishments of that. The biggest thing that happened during his life with the printing press was there was a first print run of the Bible in Latin, and it took about 3 years to print 200 copies and to distribute them. But even then, that was miraculously fast to get 200 copies of the Bible out. And, you know, after that is when everything changed. Francis Bacon, the English philosopher, he's said that in 1620 he wrote that the three inventions that forever changed the world were gunpowder, the nautical compass, and the printing press. And now I think there's a fourth, the internet. The internet is at the same level of having that impact, and social media. And I think the changes came much more quickly. I remember borrowing a friend's laptop when I was in Western Pennsylvania. I borrowed a friend's laptop because I had heard about this thing called the internet. And so I brought his laptop home and plugged it into my phone line and had my first experience with the internet, and was blown away by it. Then I remember, I'll digress for a moment here, but I remember when we moved up here, it was really when the internet was starting to pick up, but it was still dial-up service. And I remember the first Star Wars trailer, the new Star Wars movie was coming out. My wife is an enormous Star Wars fan, and we had to download that trailer. It took 8 hours to download the trailer overnight. It took us 3 nights to do it because the internet kept crashing and we couldn't. But when we finally did it, it felt massive that we had access to this in a way that we never did before. I don't think we really we're living through it. And so it's hard to even imagine the impact that the internet has on our lives and how it's changed our lives. I mean, just the idea of this thing in our lives and what it can do and what it's done for every industry, but especially my industry. You know, people often ask me, how's your circulation? How's your print circulation doing? Our print circulation is down. It's been steadily down for a while. It's actually fairly consistent, but we're lucky that way. But I tell people, you cannot measure our impact on the community by print circulation anymore. We are exponentially deeper in the community and reaching the community in a way that we never could before, and it's all because of the internet. So it's an amazing, wonderful thing. But, and by the way, I'm not even going to touch on AI. I have no idea what AI is going to do. I remain slightly optimistic that it won't have the kind of cataclysmic impact a lot of people are talking about, especially on my industry, because I don't see how AI is going to write a school board story. I'm still trying to figure out how that might happen, and I don't think it will. But things change constantly, and we have to keep up with them. But, you know, even at the local level, the downside of all this is that search for truth has gotten a lot more complicated. There's plenty of examples, by the way, of attempts to hide information at the local level. And our efforts, we're fighting that battle all of the time. And honestly, I don't think people in local government are bad people, but I do think that it's easier sometimes to do things quietly and in secret. And it's not public business when it's done in secret. And so we fight that battle all of the time. We just fought that battle. I can go back and tell you a story of the first big battle like that I fought was back in Western Pennsylvania. We had a flood in our town. It was actually a biblical flood. The geologists said that it was the worst flood in 2,000 years. It turned a little stream that ran through our town into a raging river, and I lived up on the hill overlooking a bridge. And my wife and I stood up there and watched as houses washed down against the bridge on the upstream side. It was unbelievable. That the high school was damaged in the process, and the local superintendent actually got high school students to go into the hallways and use snow shovels to scrape up asbestos tiles, and then took them to a farm field and tried to burn them for some reason. This is really a hazardous thing to have done, and we uncovered this, and that, along with another terrible thing that we uncovered, which was that he also stole some computers that were provided that had been damaged, and Apple Computers had shipped some new computers, and he borrowed a couple and took them on his own. He ended up facing federal charges, partly because of stories that we did. So that fight for truth and finding what's really going on behind the scenes is important to us. We just had a story in our papers this past week about a West Hampton Beach Village police officer who flipped a vehicle, walked away. He had also apparently, whether it's related or not, had his firearm while he was intoxicated. But we found out that he was disciplined for this, but he never faced any charges except for driving with an expired registration. And to make it worse, the village board signed a disciplinary agreement with him at a meeting that wasn't properly advertised. So we never knew about it. You never knew about it. The public did not hear about this until we did a records search, which is something we regularly do, and we found it. So that fight for truth is an important one. And it leads me to what I think is the most important story that I have done in my career, and that was a national story, January 6th, when our local Congressman Lee Zeldin was in the middle of what happened at the Capitol. Now, we knew that this was where the rubber hit the road when it comes to putting facts over fictions at the local level. It's a national story, but this is obviously a local story as well. My staff writer, Michael Wright, and one of my editors, Brendan O'Reilly, took on the task. Michael reported extensively on Zeldin's comments on the House floor. Brendan took a different tack at my request, and I asked him to very closely go over all of the comments that Congressman Lee Zeldin made on the House floor and to tell us whether they were accurate or not. The story that resulted is still online. The headline on it is Analysis: Lee Zeldin's House floor speech on election was deficient in facts. I can tell you that at the time he had rose on the House floor, and this was at about 10 p.m. on January 6th, not long after all the violence had taken place, and challenged Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Pennsylvania, the results in those elections. Point by point, Brendan broke down the lies that he told. And I'm proud to say that that coverage won several regional and state awards. Brendan and Mike both won an award, and the judges said in one contest, "This is a substantive example of pure journalism." I agree, and it was also my proudest moment as a local journalist. And it outlines the challenges that the new technology brings, because those lies were spread on social media and on the internet. We're not immune to that at the local level. And this is the biggest challenge that we have going forward as an industry. But it's also a challenge for readers. I taught at Stony Brook University for 3 semesters in a program called News Literacy. The News Literacy program is about the idea that you are news consumers, and you have to have the tools to know how to judge the value of what you're reading from where you get it and how it's being presented to you. It's very important that you do that. The stakes are so much higher now, too. They really are. And Kent said some remarkable things in his brief comments earlier, and one of them is, one of the things that struck me in the last few years is in June 2018, the mass shooting at the Capitol newspaper in Annapolis, Maryland. This is a local newspaper and a disgruntled community member who had filed a defamation suit against the newspaper that was thrown out of court is the one who attacked the newspaper's newsroom, and 5 were killed, 2 were injured. And I'll tell you, the 5 people who were killed, and I'm going to read their names: Gerald Fishman, Rob Hyacin, John McNamara, Rebecca Smith, and Wendy Winters. When I read about those people at those newspapers, at that newspaper, in that newsroom, and the folks who worked at that paper, I saw my paper. That was my newspaper. And when I read about the shooter, I recognized that person. That person exists in almost every community. Thank God they do not act out in every community. But it demonstrates how high the stakes really are. And as Kent pointed out, journalists all over the globe are at risk. And it's a reminder that can happen here. But we're not deterred. The fight for truth and the quest for facts and meanings, it's a Gnostic struggle. It's worth fighting, and it's something we will do. We'll do it with our regular coverage. We do it now with express sessions, which are about conversations just like we're having right now. And I think that's one of the most important things we do. At a time when we talk at each other, and we have an ability to talk at each other in a way that we never have before, we very rarely get together and talk with each other, and express sessions are all about doing that. And I think they're having a real impact. We do it with our podcast, we do it with our radio show. The way we do it has changed. It's always new, it's always something different. But in 25 years of significant change, like we've seen not since Gutenberg, I think the battle is every bit as important today as it was when the first printing press democratized knowledge. We are still fighting that battle today. So please help us with that. You do have a role as news consumers as well. I'm excited I hope it's not 25 more years, frankly. I don't think I can do 25 more. But I hope to continue doing this into the future. It's been really rewarding, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about it a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Those express sessions are just extraordinary, and what a gift to the community on top of everything else that the press does.
Do you mind if I ask Joe one quick question?
Sure.
I just want to know how you feel about the whole idea of expressing both sides of an issue, and to the extent that, let's hear, in some sense, potentially one extreme side and another extreme side, and see somehow if we can get to the middle in some form of truth. I just wonder what your thoughts are.
Could you come to the mic? Yeah. Celia asks, how do you deal with requests to get both sides of the issues aired, sometimes if they're both extreme?
It's interesting because I think that's the key question we face as an industry right now. It's the both sides. And there are obvious examples of where there are two sides, but they are unequal sides. One side is just simply not accurate. And I think we saw that with the election results. And I actually think it was an incredible challenge to what we do as a news media writ large. I think they handled that pretty well under the circumstances. We've never had that level of disinformation out there that had to be disproven, and I think they did that. But I think we have to figure that out, and I think we are figuring it out. I'll bring it to a local level. The conversation that's happening in Sag Harbor right now with the Marsden Project. There are two very passionate sides in that fight. They are both presenting facts. Those facts are accurate in different ways. I mean, I don't know that you can necessarily say that even when the facts don't agree, that one side's wrong and the other side isn't. They're presenting facts in different ways. It's our challenge to make that clear to readers. We're actually going to try and do that a little bit this week with that particular story, because I think we're getting out of balance a little bit, and we do need some balance just to say, let's get back to the facts of what is happening, and then you can base your opinion on that. But I think news media in general need to stay focused on facts, and the two sides is part of the equation, but it's not all. It's, this is a huge conversation that I think we have to keep having, though. No question. It's a great question.
Thank you. Please stand, and we'll sing our final hymn, which is number 163 in the Gray Hymnal, For the Earth Forever Turning.
For the earth forever turning, for the skies of everything, for our lives are all we cherish, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the mountains, hills, and pastures in their silent majesty, for our stars, for all the heavens, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the sun, for rain and thunder, for the seasons' harmony, for our lives, for all creation, sing we our joyful praise to thee. For the world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we sing, returning home to our blue green hills of earth.
Isn't that a beautiful hymn? I love it. That brings us back to spring and the thunder shower we had last night. So, if you were joining us on Zoom, this room will remain open for a few minutes after our service concludes for informal conversation. And we do hope you'll stick around, those in the meeting house, to have coffee and refreshments. And you can buttonhole Joe and ask him some more questions. Who was today's hospitality volunteer? I think it was Ken. Thank you, Ken, for bringing, and okay, a bunch of it. Thank you for bringing the goodies. Hopefully we have some Angeli baked goods. Yay. All right. And thank you for this week's greeter, which I think is Martha. Thank you, Martha. So we hope you'll join us next week. Our worship leader will be Reverend Kimberly, and her topic is entitled All About You, a bit of a departure from our regular worship. We will learn about each other and what we share in community. Sounds intriguing. So if you're visiting for the first time or the 50th, if you're in agreement with our values and our mission, sign up. We want you to make a home here. The benediction that I'm going to share with you is created by our very own Reverend Kimberly and is available throughout UU land, which is nice to see. She draws on inspiration from the words of June Jordan in Poem for South African Women, which was presented at the UN on August 9th of 1978. It is entitled Fitted for This Day. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we've been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones who have been waiting. We have been waiting for. So our closing song will be from Stephen, and it's a song that may warm the hearts of many of us old hippies. Enjoy.
And you can sing along.
Love is but the song we sing, and fear's the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, make the angels cry. No, the dove is on the wing, and you need not know why. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come, some will come and some will go, and some will surely pass. When the one who left us here returns for us at last, we are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. If you hear the song I sing, you must understand. You hold the key to love and fear, all in your trembling hand. Just one key unlocks them both. It's there at your command. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
Please join me in reading the words to extinguish the chalice in your order of service. Maybe you know it by heart by now. Many of us do. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Reverend Kimberly is playing with reviving the doxology, a little song that we sing at the end of every service. So we've done this once or twice, I think, but when I was a kid, we would have a short doxology that went something like, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow." So some of you remember that from Protestant days. So we're going to try that with number 381 in your order of service, which is just lyrics, and Stephen will play that melody that we can sing along with. Does that sound right?
I'll be playing slightly different melody.
Oh, really? Oh.
Maybe we'll do it twice, just.
Okay.
From all that dwells below the skies, let songs of woe
Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue.
Second time.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue.
Thank you. Go forth and drink coffee.
Hey there, everyone. I just wanted to make a comment about the weeding that's going on today. I know that Kent made a comment about that darn mugwort, but the mugwort is well used in Chinese medicine herbally.
My
And so
apologies.
it's not a weed. It might be a little invasive in our area, but it has many, many uses in Chinese medicine.
Thank you, Tuna. My apologies. We'll save some for you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, you are one time. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Impressive. Thank you.